We discussed why we need Flutter instead of just Dart, but Flutter isn't the only framework. What sets Flutter apart from all the other framework solutions out there? To explain this, we'll walk through the value proposition statement on the flutter.dev homepage, and this is what it looks like. So we're going to go piece by piece about this. So first, Flutter is open source. And we already know that it's a framework. We covered why that is. And it's an open source framework by Google. So what does that mean? So that means you go to GitHub, you can find the repository called Flutter/Flutter. You can actually look at the Flutter code in here. So the Flutter framework is out there fully for you to see how the code works and how it was implemented. And you can even look at the contributors, and you'll notice that the contributors are software engineers at Google. Now, being an open source project means if you're having an issue with the framework, you can definitely log this issue. And you can even work on the framework itself, maybe even fix the issue by yourself if you know how to do it. It means you can actually go into all the Flutter code. You can go to the library and you can see, for example, the code that's written for animations. And you can actually find out exactly how it works and make changes for it to work better for you. Now, that's a lot easier said than done. This is a lot of code and it's complicated, but it's nice that it's public and anybody in the world can be working on this and making it better. So next, Flutter is also natively compiled. If we go back to the previous example that we had of the demo application, you could see in the Explorer window showing all the folders, there's folders for Windows, Web, macOS, Linux, iOS, and Android. So when you create your Flutter application, your code runs through these folders to make it set up for that specific platform, and you get code that is native to that platform. So multi-platform means you can compile the same code to all of those platforms at once. So it's not like you're writing Flutter code and you can only compile it to Android. You get all those platforms that we showed off at the same time. And that's all from a single code base. So there are some other frameworks that do some of these things. For example, there's other frameworks that are open source, but they might only be able to make websites. There's even some multi-platform frameworks out there, but they might not be supported by Google, or they might not be natively compiling. So Flutter is the one that does all of those things right out of the box. And if that's not enough, Flutter does some more things. So you can hot reload in Flutter, which means you can see your code changes happen almost instantaneously as you save them. It's also very flexible and lets you control every pixel on the screen. And kind of the last point we mentioned already, it compiles to the native language, so it's very fast. Now this last slide, you don't have to memorize it all. It's just a high-level overview of how Flutter works. So at the very top, you have the Flutter framework itself. This is what you would be interacting with as you write your Flutter code. This uses widgets to create the user interface and everything the user will be dealing with. But this framework is just the top level. Right under it is the Flutter engine. This takes care of the background tasks that it actually takes to run software. So things like rendering and frame scheduling and pipelining, all of these are handled by the Flutter engine. And the last step is making these applications work for all the different platforms that we have. So every device from the different manufacturers, whether it's from Apple or Android or some other device manufacturer, they have their own custom ways of doing things. So you need to make sure you have an embedder that lets you make those custom connections to make everything work how it's supposed to.